We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, I did not turn on that light. Hold on a second. Hold on. We're scrambling. Hold on. I'm going to need to fire the producer of the show, which is me, of course. Anyways, what was I saying? Welcome into the studio. You know the bit. Hit the subscribe button. Smash the like button. Make sure you have your notifications turned on. If you want to donate to this College Football Rebel Outpost channel to help us keep the lights on, hit the $sign where you make a comment. And I'll get to you super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody, one and all, into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend with your comments in the chat room, with your phone calls later in the show. Carson, we are live. We are live. Thank you so much for leading us off. Super chat, thank you for your generosity. John Kurtz. John Kurtz. John Kurtz, who does an amazing job. An amazing job with everything he does. He just released an interview with Mr. Ross Dellenger. And we provide a link in the description. Obviously, I cannot show you his content, but at any time, leave the chat room and go watch the interview for yourself. During this live show, go ahead. It's a short interview. It's a very impactful interview. It's going to be it's very impactful interview. And of course, John Kurtz has the skill set to do a great interview. He asked the question, every question he asked, he said, yeah, ask that one. Yeah, ask that one. A skill set, unfortunately, the fat guy from Minnesota does not have. I wrote down the notes. I was very fortunate that Mr. John Kurtz gave me the heads up. He just released it. And I did not need confirmation. We broke the story a couple weeks ago that the Big 12 has had third-party talks with Florida State and Clemson. I got quite the blowback on it. And today I was going to add, and I'm still going to do it, just a little bit of a nugget, not too much. I'm going to put a little bit of a flavor on it. Be it butterscotch, be it peanut butter. I'm just going to put a little bit of flavor on it. But then suddenly, and I was going to do some other, I already had this show all lined up, but then everybody received the confirmation of what we reported a couple weeks ago. There has been discussions, third-party discussions, and people are still confusing first party and third party. People are still out there saying, well, this doesn't make any sense. This is hypocritical. People are saying that the Big Ten has not had talks with Florida State and Clemson, but suddenly the Big 12 are. That's not what anybody is reporting. The Big Ten, the SEC, will not have first-party talks. Neither will the Big 12. But there's been third-party talks. And the Big 12 talks with some ACC schools have been recent. Now, there have been people trying to rationalize this, saying this has only come out because it's the Big 12 media days. The Big 12 people are the ones who are talking about it. They're trying to stir something up. They're trying to, what they did with the Pac-12, and that is partly true. That's part of what Yormark does. He's aggressive. He says they're the third power conference. They're open for business. They're looking at naming rights. They're looking at private equity, and they're kind of looking at expansion when it becomes available to them. He said that all yesterday in Las Vegas. He did some of it with a smile. But I can tell you, the news, the information, the chatter that Florida State and Clemson and other schools have been having third-party talks with the Big 12, that has been out there. That's why I reported it a couple of weeks ago on this show. We're going to go through it. We're going to start with this breaking news. I just want to touch upon other stories. One other story that I cannot believe, it better not be true, about the college football playoffs. Because if it is, I'm going to stroke out. I'm not even going to be around to watch the first ever expanded college football playoffs if what I'm about to show you is actually true, because I'm going to stroke out during this live show. So I hope to God, I hope somebody in the PATC community, I hope one of you can sit me down and say, no. This was a joke. This was humor. They're not going to do that. The playoff committee is not going to do that, Greg. Relax. I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that one of you can do this, because I'm about to stroke out. Because if it's true, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard since we heard this talk about the Big Ten and the SEC grabbing automatically a first round bye, just those two conference champions. This ranks right up there with the lunacy. It better not be true. We're going to hit that story second. I'm afraid if I do that story first, I'm going to go like that, and then we can't get to the big story. Big 12, confirmed. Been having third-party talks with Florida State and Clemson. It's a confirmation to everybody out there, but the PATC community, you got the information a couple weeks ago. We were able to let you know. And we held a little bit back, but we're going to push the envelope. Now that this is out there confirmation-wise, now we're going to put a little bit of a flavor on it. A little bit of a butterscotch. A little bit of a peanut butter. A little bit Oreo, mint, chip. A little bit of flavor on the story, if you don't mind. Joaquin Morales is in the house. Charlie Atwood, we are. Penn State. Nick Boardman, go Hokies. The Empire Marketing. Mr. Monkey says. John Menser. Ray is here. Ray is here. Good afternoon. Don in Kansas. Here we go. PATC. The Walking Geek. Stephen McNeely. Patrick. Go Baylor Bears. Dog Steinhauser. Mr. Terrapin, D5 Terps, Lee Go Gators, Matt Neeson, Go Cyclones, Randy Taylor, FF Knoll, waste of time. This has no factual basis. Auto Raider is in the house. Devil Frog is here. KS Bear Fan is here. CFB Plus, holy smokes. Summon Hawk, Mr. Bearcat is here. Mrs. Seminole is here. Tracy, FSU, Gold Nose, Michael Uten, Terry Kane, holy smokes. Daniel Gorby, Caleb Ramirez, Red Raider, Laura Weiss is in the house. Lee Austin Jr., BR7062, more Cloak and Dagger, Rock and Rant, Front Runner is here. Preston from Greensboro for the Canes. Bemba 7579. Mick Stevens is in the house. Holy smokes. Matthew, I love the show. Greg, I love you being here. Matthew, I do appreciate it. Clinton Moses is here. Joe Z is here. Colorado, Buffalo, Richard L. Deion Sanders. Today in Big 12 Media. I'm not measured like everybody else. My wins are not measured the same way everybody else is. Deion Sanders at the Big 12 Media. A Korea is in the house. Keep a Choppin' is here. Jan is here. Skaven, yes, yes. Chave Chapman. Humble, Bumble, Duck. Frontrunner is here. Paul Clifton. Screw the Big 12. MBM, Stephen Vitt, RT, Daniel, David Hall, Willie Workman is in the house. If you all think Florida State is entertaining this BS, literally a drunk lateral move. Maybe not. If you listen to Ross Dellenger, maybe not. Vox is in the house. Jay is in the house. I'm sure everybody's had third-party talks with Florida State. At least the other three power conferences have. No question about it. Juan Carlos is here. Chad Bracey, Thomas. Sipalada Delta is in the house. Matthew I, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm sorry, I did not see that earlier. You do a great show. Thank you, Matthew I. Do appreciate you coming on in. I apologize for not seeing that super chat earlier. Immaculate is in the house. Gerald Jones, Random Tees. Discussions between Minnesota State and the Mid-American Conference. Haven't heard that. Jeff Morgan is in the house. Old Dad. David Kreitzer, check it out. Florida State is a flagship school. Nathan is here. Sean, Summit Hawk. Whew, we got to get through this roll call here. We got a lot to get through. Okay, here we go. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. John Kurtz interviews, a great interview. Again, there is a link in the description. Go watch it yourself. Ross Dellenger, John Kurtz asked about, all the things that Brett Yormark discussed at Big 12 Media Days and discussed the naming rights, private equity, and possible expansion when and if it becomes available to the Big 12. Ross Dellenger says that Brett Yormark is always aggressive, always trying to strike a deal. He thinks outside the box. John Kurtz says, now I'm paraphrasing it. Go listen to the interview yourself. John Kurtz, this is paraphrasing, it says, can Clemson and Florida State going into the Big 12, can that come into the realist world? Could that be something that is real? Could it happen? Really? And then Ross Dellenger says, let's look at Florida State's options. The number one option for Florida State would be go to the Big Ten or the SEC. Obvious. He listed both at option number one. Ross Dellenger. Option number two. Again, very, very interesting. Got to keep an eye on this. Option number 2 for Florida State and Clemson would be the ACC, a smaller number of teams. So again, we're talking about the dissolution theory. And if you're looking at that possibility, after August 1st, after August 2nd, you're going to have to bring in, at least 9 teams to dissolve the conference. I'm not much of a believer in that theory. But according to Ross Dellenger, that is the second option. The third option is to join the Big 12. So Big 12 is an option. Ross Dellenger says about option 1, Florida State going to the Big 10 and the SEC. Ross Dellenger says, I don't know if it will happen. He doesn't dig too far deep in this. There is, I keep saying there's going to be another layer to the story, that eventually somebody, somewhere, sometime, probably multiple reports on it, no question. There's another layer to this story. There is. And it was part of my May 23rd, where we had to flip the script here at Peek Around the Corner. Ross Dellenger says, I don't know if option 1 will happen. Don't know. Obviously, he's not hearing that it's a done deal with the Big 10 of the SEC, kind of like what we've been telling you for over a year. He says the Big 10, yeah, they might come south. What's the interest in coming south now? Now, we know here at Peek Around the Corner that their goal has been to come south, to go east at least, southeast probably. But you can look at Ross Dellenger's body language, whatever. You can tell he's been told, this is my opinion, that the Big Ten is being very cautious and deliberate and doesn't have Florida State and Clemson as their number 1 targets. But he didn't go there, so that's my opinion. So you can read his body language when he said, don't really know about Big Ten's interest right now and going south. He talked about the SEC. He didn't really go deep into that. He said, well, they've already got a school in South Carolina and Florida. And there is more of option 1, the story. And either, Ross Dellenger is going to talk about it. Somebody's going to talk about it. Somebody's going to talk about it. So, they're just, at this point, they're not the number 1 targets. As great as schools, great a brand they are, and they absolutely are, Clemson and Florida State. Option number 1, Ross Dellenger says, I don't know if that's going to happen. And that is the consensus of the chatter behind the curtain. There has, Dellinger, he says there has been conversations between the Big 12 and the schools of the ACC, Florida State and Clemson, and I think he meant others as well. We know that to be true at Peek Around the Corner. That is what we reported to you a couple weeks ago. He also said those discussions cannot become serious until Florida State, the ACC, and other ACC schools, but of course Florida State and Clemson are leading the pack. Florida State and Clemson cannot have serious talks, first party talks, with the Big 12 and anybody else until they can free themselves from the ACC, or at least when people know they can be free. Again, Ross Dellenger, Yahoo Sports, the great Ross Dellenger, is telling you there cannot be serious talks. There is a difference. I just saw a whole bunch of comments on the message board sent to me saying there's no difference. There's always talk. Oklahoma and Texas, different situation. The legal departments and the SEC could talk to Oklahoma and Texas because the grant of rights was only a few years away. Same with USC. Same with Colorado. This is a different story. People are still getting confused between this story and the other realignment stories. There cannot be any serious talks. Ross Dellenger just confirmed that again to you today. There's been no serious talk between the Big Ten and ACC schools. The SEC has not had those serious talks. But through information coming from a few particular important sources, the chatter behind the curtain believes that Florida State and Clemson, as valuable as they are, and they are, they're just not the first line of targets for the Big Ten and the SEC. And that didn't quite come out in this interview, but be patient, ladies and gentlemen. Be patient. So, Ross Dellenger says those conversations cannot be serious at this time until Florida State and Clemson frees themselves. And by the way, these third-party talks are more than just Clemson and Florida State when it comes to ACC schools, between the Big 12 and the ACC schools. John Kurtz asked the question. Again, just a great interview. He knew the next question that should be asked. This is John Kurtz asking Ross Dellenger, would private equity help get Clemson and Florida State? Would private equity, if the Big 12 did the private equity, would it help Clemson and Florida State to come to the Big 12? Could that be something that would attract Clemson and Florida State into the Big 12? And Ross Dellenger said, in his opinion, he believed that private equity could help Clemson and Florida State get out of the ACC, the money to help them get out of the ACC, and he also said, and this would also need to happen, the private equity money would have to go to Clemson and Florida State, and they would have to be paid at least close to the Big Ten and the SEC schools for this to happen. He also talked about, would the Big 12 be okay with this unequal unequal revenue to bring in Clemson and Florida State. Would the athletic directors, would the presidents, would the Big 12, would they actually pull the trigger on this? Of course, he doesn't know. It's quite obvious. People have been having discussions about this. The chatter behind the curtain. Clemson and Florida State would bring in a lot of value to the Big 12. We've talked about it. Right away, they would bring in a different percentage of playoff distribution percentage. Everybody in the Big 12 would make more money day one. I mean, they'd probably, all the Big 12 schools could make, I don't know, $4 to $5 million more a year in playoff distribution because of the adjusted percentage. You play that out a number of years, and that's a lot of money. Shoot, that could be just given to Florida State and Clemson. Anyways. So this is what Ross Dellenger is pontificating on. He also Ross Dellenger confirmed John Kurtz reporting that there is a high hurdle for private equity involvement in the Big 12. Doesn't know if they're going to be able to jump over that hurdle. Because if you sign that private equity plan, you're going to be signing for a longer grant of rights. Those current Big 12 schools would have to extend the current GOR, the grant of rights, for this to happen. Typically, private equity involvement would need to extend it from 10, 15, possibly 20 years. Obviously, 20 years ain't going to work. But the grant of rights might have to extend another 10 years after here in the current 6 years. A lot of schools would be hesitant to do that. There is more to the interview, not on that particular subject, but please go check that interview out. I do have a link provided in the description box. John Kurtz, job well done. Now let me add a little bit of a flavor. To this. When we reported, so this next part is, we're going to do this again, ladies and gentlemen. This next part is allegedly. Allegedly. What I'm about to say is allegedly true. It might not be true. So you're probably saying, Greg, well, why are you telling us? I just trying to provide a peek around the corner. We provided the peek around the corner when we reported that there's been definitely recent third-party talks between Florida State, Clemson, Big 12, and now it's coming out. There's a little bit more to the story, allegedly. So the lawyers that are watching this show, we're going to continue to say allegedly during this portion of the program. Allegedly. Allegedly, these third-party talks between the Big 12 and some of these ACC schools were allegedly a little bit more aggressive than your typical third-party talks. Third-party talks, there's no lawyers involved. There's nobody directly hired by the conference. It's just a talk of who should we talk to? Where can we get evaluation? What do you know? There's a big, big difference between first-party talks and third-party talks. Allegedly, these third-party talks were a little bit more, maybe not third-party, but like 2.5. There was more there than your typical, allegedly. So I just wanted to put that out there. We know this has been, we've known this is, it only really gets serious when Florida State and Clemson can free themselves, right? The only real serious talks are first-party talks, and none of that has happened. Ross Dellenger did say and again, he said it later in the interview, we don't know. He goes, I don't know if this is going to take months or years of Florida State and Clemson and other ACC schools. He doesn't know. But again, when it happens, then there's going to be serious discussions. So, for everybody out there, once again, no, this was not a story that the Big 12 just told the reporters to get them to do their bidding. There's no grand misinformation conspiracy. None of that is happening. That is stuff that people bring up because they have to tell you something because they've been giving you a load of crap for months, over a year. This is not misinformation. There has been third-party talks. A little bit more aggressive than your natural third-party talks. That might come out. It's not going to come out from me. Those a little bit more third-party aggressive talks, allegedly. So, but they've happened recently. We know that because we reported to you. And when we reported to you, it was recent. So the, Clemson and Florida State, why are they having third-party talks with the Big 12? Because they want to create as many options as possible. Right? When they do get free, they want to, and also, they might know, they might have a perception that, I think they definitely do know, that maybe they're not the first line of targets for the SEC and the Big Ten, even though they're incredibly valuable. They would need to have the pieces fall a certain way. Again, we've talked about it at Peek Around the Corner. We've given the advice that no one's going to listen, of course, but, relationships. Because as we reported about 3 weeks ago, that was going to be the straw that stirs the drink on this story. It's not just about the spreadsheets. It's not just about viewerships. It's not just about endowments and all these other things, although it all plays a part in it. But the biggest component is relationships. And I believe Florida State's probably working overtime on relationships with just about everybody. And that also includes Clemson. That also includes Miami. That also includes Louisville. That also includes Duke. That also includes a couple other schools. Before Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech, yes, I'm not laughing. That is a, yes. Before we go to your phone calls, I gotta, first of all, let me hit this. EA Sports has announced the highest rated players in the new NCAA football 25 video game. Will Johnson, Will Campbell, Ollie Gordon, and James Pierce, of course, and the rest of them. Holy smokes. Those are your top 10 players in EA Sports. Pete Thamel announces that Utah and UCLA have scheduled a home-and-home series, which will begin with the Utes opening the 2025 season at the Rose Bowl. UCLA will play a return game in Salt Lake City in 2030. And now, this story. Colin Wilson, Action Network, new college football playoff executive director Rich Clark on the selection committee picking the first round home teams. Weather, hotel availability, ticket sales. Immaculate says there's a video out there that this was said with proper context. Please, somebody send me this. Please, someone tell me this is a joke. Okay, all right, let me look at the DM. Holy smokes. Okay. All right. Okay. The fat guy from Minnesota is not going to stroke out today. James McCormick, he's not saying that the weather will be the determining factor for host sites. He seems to be saying that whoever hosts the game will have to think about the weather in hosting a mid-December game affects southern storms off the Gulf. Okay. All right. Okay. Holy smokes. Thank you, Immaculate. Thank you, everybody else, for pulling me off the ledge, because I was about to go into a rant that would have destroyed the studio. We're not going to waste time on that. We're not going to waste time on that story. Thank you so much for saving me. Holy smokes. Because if it was that, yeah, I was about to go off. Thank you so much, Immaculate, and everybody else. Okay, let's do it. Let's open up the phone lines. Does this confirmation, you can talk about anything in college football that you want. In fact, I might just go back into the Big 12 media days. I might go back into my predictions once again, lay it out there. I'm going to go 16 for 16 with my Big 12 predictions, order of finish. Everybody knows that I'm going to do exactly that.
Call from
CFB Plus.
CFB Plus. Did this confirmation, Ross Dellenger, the Big 12 having third-party talks with Florida State and Clemson and other ACC schools. Does this change your perception on what is going on the ground? The floor is yours.
Thank you. First off, to answer your question, no, not at all, because you've talked about or alluded to the fact that Florida State and Clemson have had third-party talks, and I think, both parties, both sides, are going to do their due diligence. Now, whether it goes anywhere, that's to be said or to be seen. My question is kind of something a bit different, but I think it really affects how the dominoes fall in relation to this is what happens with North Carolina. Because I think right now it's clear that the Big Ten, they want Notre Dame and they want UNC. The SEC, they want UNC and UVA. But only one of those conferences can get North Carolina. And so depending on which conference gets North Carolina and how those dominoes fall may affect the likelihood of whether the Big 12 can land Florida State and Clemson. Because if the SEC comes in and says, we'll take NC State, we'll take UNC, we'll take Virginia Tech, and we'll take UVA, that satisfies the internal politics in that state, then they may grab those four. And if they do that, then the Big Ten is looking at adding Notre Dame, and then who do they add with Notre Dame? Is that Florida State? Probably not Clemson. Is that Stanford, like some people say, or is that Miami? Because, who is Notre Dame's biggest relationship with, and what are they willing to grab? Or Georgia Tech? Who knows?
And who do you think Notre Dame's closest relationships are?
To be quite frank, I'm not entirely sure. I think Stanford they obviously have pretty close relationship with, but I don't know if that's worth adding Stanford to the conference. Then it would probably be Miami. So Notre Dame and Miami, but it's kind of hard to take Miami over Florida State, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When the Miami relationship may be stronger, but you're still tapping into Florida, and Florida State's going to have a bigger brand and presumably bring in more money. But still,
yeah.
If the Big Ten adds Miami, then you're looking at the Big 12 adding Florida State, Clemson, probably Louisville, and then someone else, or maybe
let me bring this up. Not just for you, but for the PATC people in the chat room. You're right. I think head to head, I think Florida State would be a higher value to the Big Ten and to the SEC versus Miami. Okay? But if we're talking about relationships, maybe Miami and Notre Dame could be closer, possibly, maybe, than Notre Dame and Florida State. I don't know. That possibly could be. But you also got to look at, and I'm just throwing this out there, you know what? I really can't. I'm going to stop right there.
You're good.
Yeah, I'm good. I can't really. Yeah, you may want to take an opportunity to and this is for everybody, to go do a little bit of research and find out exactly what Jack Swarbrick needs, remember Jack Swarbrick said we need to get paid enough to stay independent football. We need playoff access. And we need to have our Olympic sports taken care of. Okay? We need to have a place. We need our Olympic sports student athletes to be well served. It is, by the way, the reason why Notre Dame left Hockey East to go to the Big Ten, because it was hard on the Notre Dame men's hockey players. It was a lot easier for them to play in the Big Ten, just because it was, it was just easier to get in and out of locations and whatever. Not going to go down that. So if you want to do a little bit of research, just go check out what Swarbrick has said in the past in public about his Olympic teams in the ACC, and you might pick up on something. But eventually, it's going to play. It could play a part in all that what happens here in the future. Again, this is going to eventually bubble up to the top, and we'll talk about it then. But anything else, sir?
That's about it. Just based on your comments, really. So the money part is going to be taken care of in the Big Ten. The playoff access would be taken care of the Big Ten. But Stanford has the best Olympic sports, or at least when I think of Stanford, I think of their Olympic sports.
It's not just who's got a better Olympic. Like,
is it location? Like, they don't want to go to SoCal and Miami in the same year.
Yeah, I can't go any further.
No, you're good. I understand.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, that's about it for me. Thanks for the show.
You.
Appreciate it.
Great call. Nope, not TV viewers. Notre Dame relishes the East Coast presence. No question about that. Greg, are you okay? You sound really tired. I'm doing fine. I'm hemming and hawing because I almost went down a rabbit hole I got to avoid for now.
Call from
Chad Bracey.
Chad Bracey, the floor is yours. How you doing, good sir?
Doing well. I have an alternative situation here, and it's basically just based on saving money. So let's play out the hypothetical of Florida State and Clemson. Their idea was they knew all along Notre Dame and UNC were the prizes, but the assumption was that by getting out earlier, availability was an advantage. Now,
maybe
if
maybe that still be the case, but go ahead.
It could be, but in this situation, let's say the P2 is closed to them, at least for now, and they know that that's not an option. What is the advantage of pursuing the cases and spending millions of dollars just so UNC can skip to the SEC? Why not drop the case, force UNC to spend the money to break open, and then leave to the Big 12 anyway on the cheap? Why blow the extra money now when you could force someone else that wants to get to the P2 to do that, and then you get out for infinitely cheaper, because that's your landing spot anyway in this scenario?
Yeah. Well, because they truly don't know. They don't know. I mean, I think I would presume, but I'm just presuming because I really don't have this part nailed down, but I would think they have the same perception of the lay of the land as the people, the chatter behind the curtains does. But I'm not sure on that. But they just want to have They want to have serious conversations. They want to have options. So
I understand. I understand that there hasn't been any serious conversations. They don't know, and they're doing this to find out what they can do. But if the chatter gets loud enough to where they think, hey, this really isn't going to happen,
and it's going to get louder.
You might see Florida State and Clemson tell ESPN and ACC, all right, we're going to bend the knee. We're going to, this is embarrassing, but we're just going to stick behind and let someone else pay to stab ACC in the back later on.
Interesting comment. Interesting comment. Now, and I really don't have an answer to. Very interesting comment.
Because that also buys time. It buys time for Florida State to increase their research expenditures. It buys time for Florida State to gain an AAU status. It buys time to be a more valuable product in the meantime.
It buys
and
them
it keeps
time
the P2 spots open.
To work on their relationships. I can't
emphasize
that enough.
And it keeps if they don't leave and they don't break open the ACC, someone else has to, or else those spots remain open.
What I find so Ross Dellenger confirmed basically our reporting and in the bubbling up of people talking at the Big 12 media days. It wasn't just for show, wasn't just the Big 12 people pushing this. Stuff is actually happening, third-party talks. But the other part, the real interesting part of the interview was when Ross Dellenger said option 2 is for a smaller, more concise, more valuable ACC conference. In other words, the dissolution theory. So
right, and he had also mentioned that in an article in the past.
Yeah. But now he's just mentioned it again. So again, I think people should start. Again, have not been a believer in that as well. But you look, I might be taking the L on this. Ross Dellenger ain't going to just bring it up like this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, at one point, it could have been a month or two ago, he did come out with something saying that that's the scenario he thought was most likely. Because he's never been really on the train of thinking that there was a likely. I mean, he didn't close the door, but he's never been really high on the Big Ten or SEC invite.
Yeah, well, and a lot of them aren't. All of them aren't, and that's what I've been trying to say since May 23rd.
Well,
they're not
and
the first
not
option. They're not. Go ahead.
That's not anything against the Big 12. I mean, for the record, I think Florida State and Clemson would be happier in the Big 12 than the ACC.
Yeah.
I think that's a great conference. I think those are good teams, and I think they could do something with that. And I think the private equity thing, I'm not sure how good of an idea that is for the Big 12. But I mean, I'm sure that could make Florida State and Clemson happy. It's just, I don't see in that scenario. I don't see the rush to spend hundreds of millions of dollars fighting the ACC and paying to get out just so UNC can skip out the door to the P2.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. Very good point. And maybe, maybe we're all going to have to
slow down even more.
Well, I mean, let's get real crazy. Hold on. Can you hold on for a second? I want to keep you on the phone. Do you have more time?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me get caught up here. John Teal, thank you so much for your super chat. If Clemson and Florida State go to the Big 12, then Big 10 looks at Stanford. Only if Notre Dame comes. Only if Notre Dame finally makes a move. John Teal, thank you so much for your super chat. I do appreciate it. Jim Reese, early peak, cloak and dagger. A member once again. Jim Reese, you are hereby knighted, cloak and dagger. Thank you very much. Has been. Thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate your generosity. Thank you for helping us keep the lights on. Look. Okay, let's flip this whole discussion on its ear. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? Give me a Y if you want to really go down a rabbit hole. Give me a Y if you really want to go down a rabbit hole. Okay. Caller, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Chad Bracey.
Chad Bracey, I'm sorry. It's been, sorry about that, Chad. Usually I write down my, okay. Okay, let's get a little bit, remember Josh Pate teases, right?
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
He says,
all of them.
He said a realignment bomb, right? Could go off in July. He says it would involve Florida State and other ACC schools. He said people have been putting off this decision, pressing the button, pulling the levers, right?
Right.
All of that fits into the dissolution theory, right?
It sure does.
It sure
Yep,
does.
absolutely.
It's been sitting in front of us the whole time. And the PATC community and the fat guy from Minnesota, we've been sleeping on this. This is what it is. Yeah, great pushing dissolution. Look, I shoot, man, I'll take the L right now.
The glove does fit.
It does fit. The glove fits. Think about everything Josh Pate has said. His lawyers, they've been putting off a decision. They're going to push the button, pull the levers. It's about Florida State's the face, but this story is bigger than Florida State. It's other ACC schools. The glass is shaking. T-Rex is the dissolution theory.
Oh, my.
I mean, look, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But Josh Dellinger just brought it up. But in some ways it's less crazy than ESPN's going to drop their option this week, right?
Right.
I mean, this is something that these schools are in control of. Here is less than a month to do it. Gene Calderon. Well, it's going to be more difficult. Well, when California and Stanford gets added, Chad, that's 17 members, right? So you need 8. And you need 9. You need 9 members.
But they all want in.
You need 9 to vote for dissolution. Here's the problem. Here's a bunch of problems with this, though. One is, the other schools are probably going to, if this is happening, we're still trying to guess what Josh Pate's breaking news is. But the other schools are probably going to go to court and sue and everything. The other problem is, can Florida State and Clemson, Chad, really be able to negotiate this thing to happen with 7 other schools, with at least 6 of them giving the ACC the go-ahead to sue them a few months ago?
I think the odds are small, but we're dealing with, wild speculation on all of these scenarios.
Yes, yeah.
But I mean, it's an interesting thought. And I'll let you go so we can
All
get
right,
the other
I
callers.
appreciate it.
I just want to call in.
You got it. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. Great call. I don't know. I don't know. Josh Pate. Here's a problem with that. Here's another problem with the dissolution theory. There's one other big problem with it.
Call from
Jim?
Jim, can you hold 1 second, please?
Sure.
There's one other big problem with the dissolution theory. And that is Josh Pate, when he put out that glass with the water shaken, it was on the heels reposting the Ross Dellenger article of yesterday. The big news in that was the Big 12. Could they possibly be looking at Florida State, Clemson? In other words, when Josh Pate had the glass shaken, it was a Big 12 story that it wasn't the possible dissolution theory. There's nothing in that article. So there's another shot against this being what Josh Pate is talking about. But who knows? We're just guessing. I'm either on something or I'm on to something. I think I'm on something, to be honest with you. Go ahead, Jim. The floor is yours.
I also don't know anything, but, I couldn't figure out what the private equity deal was really about, how it would really help the Big 12 teams that much.
Yeah.
But if they spend the money to help buy out Clemson and Florida State and maybe others, that makes sense because that improves the value of the conference. Therefore, the business that's investing the X amount of money now has more value. What do you think about that?
Yeah. It makes sense, except for there are hurdles to do it, right? Everybody's gonna have to. Yeah. But it makes sense in some parts of it. Yeah, I get it. Yep. I think it's more valuable to use the equity money that way in attracting the Clemson and a Florida State than to pay out $6 million to each school for the next 5 or 6 years or whatever the number is, right?
Right. Yeah, I just don't see the sense in that.
Yeah.
I mean, and then I'm sure ESPN is pulling some strings. They may be the third party they're talking with. I don't know, but the ESPN has great value with the ACC because it's underpaid for the better teams. But if they can get the better teams to where they can pay them and get rid of, some of the teams that aren't worth as much value, I won't, slam anybody, but there's some teams that are not very, very valuable in the ACC. So if you can get, North Carolina to the ACC and you can get Florida State and Clemson and whoever to the Big 12, you can pay them a little more, pay the Big 12 more. SEC is getting, North Carolina would be getting paid, of course, a lot more. And then once 27 comes, they have dropped that, and if they want the ACC for content, they're going to get paid $8 to $10 million, not $30 million or whatever they're getting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. I don't know. I don't know anything, but.
Well, it sounds like you might know something. Very good call, sir. I do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Take care.
Call
and
again,
appreciate
Jim.
your show.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
So, Heartland College Sports puts out an article just a little bit ago talking about the breaking news that we reported right when it happened, because thank you to John Kurtz. He was able to give college football peek around the corner a heads up that this was about to drop. So thank you once again, John Kurtz. thank you for the incredible job that you did with the interview. I think you got every juice, everything out of that interview you possibly could have gotten. Big 12 expansion and early conversations with Florida State and Clemson. An interview with John Kurtz at Big 12 Media Days on Wednesday. Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellenger said that their early conversations, third-party talks, between the Big 12 and a couple of ACC schools looking to leave the league. Florida State and Clemson have been attempting to get out of the ACC for quite some time. An exit to the Big 12 appears to be one of the options at the table at this point in time. One of the options. There is at least early conversations between the Big 12 and those schools about the possibility. Dellinger told Curts, I don't know that it's anything serious yet. It can't be because they do have to get out of the ACC, whether that's through a settlement or court ruling. And then those schools, Clemson and Florida State, can have serious talks. Another reminder to every single person who has read reports, so-called reports, that Florida State has a deal, an offer, a handshake, a wink, a nod, or a nod with the SEC of the Big Ten, it's impossible for that to be true. There is at least early conversations between the Big 12 and those schools about the possibility. Dellinger told Curts, I don't know that it's anything serious yet because they do have to get out of the ACC, whether that's through a settlement or a court ruling. So we could be months or even years away from something, but that does seem to be one of the possibilities is the Big 12. Now, before you run to the water cooler and start telling your friends that the Big 12 is about to get the Tigers and the Seminoles, let's take a couple steps back. While it's a possibility, Dellinger did point out there were two options that the schools would choose ahead of the move to the Big 12 right now. When you look at Florida State and Clemson's options, the first option would probably to get into the Big 10 of the SEC. The second option would be to reform the ACC with a smaller number of teams where you would have a financial advantage because you won't split the TV distribution with 18. You would just split it with 10. Option number 3 is to join another league, which is obviously the other power league, and that's the Big 12. So that is the report. Getting the ACC's biggest football brands would take some serious cheddar. In order for the Big 12 to come up with that, they'd likely have to jump into private equity with both feet. You're not only going to have to help them out to get out, help Clemson and Florida State to get out of the ACC. You would have to pay them in distribution an amount that is at least close to what the Big Ten and the SEC are paying their schools. The Big 12 gets mid-30 million, or just call it $40 million a year per school in distribution. In the SEC and the Big Ten, they're more like at $70 million, which the number will go up. If you do use private equity or whatever financial means to get a Florida State or Clemson, are the Big 12 administrators okay with an unequal revenue distribution? Would they be okay with paying Florida State and Clemson 10 to 20 million more a year? And that's a question. That's a question I don't know the answer to, except to say that would probably be hard to convince them to do that, but it would mean adding blue blood football powers that you need. Maybe there is a shot. So there it is. That's basically the report that we started with the show with. Holy smokes. What do you think? A reform ACC. The ACC dissolution theory. Is that about to make a comeback? 10 schools. 10 schools. What would those 10 schools be? The Magnificent Seven, right? Right? Lee, it's too late, Greg. Some buckleheads are already saying on Twitter that Florida State, Clemson, and 4 other schools are joining the Big 12 by Friday. That's not happening. Okay. Let's go down this road. Again, it's just speculating. I have heard nothing of this. But I did not hear about the Magnificent Seven before it was announced, and no one else did either. But anyways, 10 schools. First of all, Magnificent Seven, right? Florida State, Miami. North Carolina State, North Carolina. Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Clemson. Those are 7. I think you would throw in a Louisville. I think you would throw in a Duke. What's the 10th school? It's not going to be Notre Dame. What's the 10th school? Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh. I don't know. Is that what we could be? Is that what Josh Payne is talking about? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I don't know, guys. I don't know what Josh Payne's talking about.
Call from
Immaculate, the floor is yours. We are standing in the land of confusion. There are some parts of the story we are clear on. Some parts of the story we do not know. What's up, sir? What do you think? Let it rip.
I was having fun just listening to everyone, but then they kind of let you go on your own with this dissolution theory. And I was like, I'm calling and talk to him about this. He might be going down a rabbit hole. I think it exists as a threat. You know, it's kind of one of those things. Look, if we have to do this, we'll do this. But I think for us to seriously consider it, we have to talk about the blowback. We have to talk about, you know, how much more court attention does this get if these schools leave and basically cause all those other schools who are left behind to not even have a conference anymore, to vote to dissolve it. What kind of damages are they directly responsible for with that vote? But I mean, if they're sitting there saying we're willing to do this, give us our settlement, our agreement for departure, or we're willing to do this. I don't know. Do you call that bluff, or are you like, oh my God, let's just give them something? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's well, I've seen it for a while now. We've talked about that in the past.
What would be your 10 teams? The Magnificent Seven, Duke, Louisville, and what would be the 10th? Or do you disagree with Duke and Louisville?
I'm kind of at a point here where I'm looking at multiple pathways for certain schools. I don't think any of them are really at a point where they know exactly what they want. But I mean, if we're coming up with 10 now, because now we're at a point where you need more, which is another failure. If they were going to go that route, they really should have pushed it earlier. But of those who might then want to get out, if we're considering the Big 12 and how they might get a big increased payday, I think you have to look at Florida State, Clemson, Louisville, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, and possibly a Virginia, possibly a Pitt. I don't know. Stanford's not even in this, so it's your Magnificent Seven. But some of those, like Miami, are they looking to go with the Notre Dame? I honestly, I don't even know if there's a 10 at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because you have to have landing spots. You have to know. You have to. I mean, if they're talking about maybe starting their own conference without some of the extras, maybe. But I don't think you can. I don't know if you could just start a new conference in the FBS. I don't know. That's where some of those new governance rules that are stuck in that settlement come into play. Right? Like maybe that's part of it. But I think it's a difficult road to go down. But I think it could be a potential threat when all you're really trying to do is get a proper settlement for exit. But in terms of actually doing that, man, that's tough. You if you do that, you're probably facing more lawsuits.
Oh God, yeah, you gotta, unless the leftovers are somehow satisfied, unless there's like, there's no. I mean, we could go down a deep rabbit hole here. So
yeah.
Now Tracy FSU says dissolution is in the bylaws. No, it's not.
Nope.
There is no dissolution in the bylaws. So therefore, it would go to the laws of the state of North Carolina when it comes to nonprofit organization. And the majority, in theory, majority shareholders could vote to dissolve a nonprofit organization. So therefore, Ross Dellenger is saying the number 10 now because that makes sense. I don't think you need 10. I think you're probably just going to need 9. But again, you're not going to go with an odd number. So 10. There's a lot of problems with it.
When you look at the ACC and when Stanford and Cal are not full members, but yet they're coming out and saying, well, now they're members. But they're not voting members until August. But it kind of seems like a play from the ACC to say, no, we are now fully at 18 members. Because, yes, at 18, you'd need 10.
Yeah.
With just SMU added at 16, you only need 9.
Yeah.
And as little of a deal that might seem, it's actually not, because when you get down to the end of that list, it gets a little bit harder. Like, okay, who wants these schools? Who's going to take these schools?
Yeah. It's one of the factors in Josh Pate's teases is he said, by the end of the week, we're going to see the first bricks fall. We're going to see the first steps of this dam breaking. Okay? So it's got to be, it's got to be like whatever's going on, who's ever going to be pushing the levers and pulling the levers and pushing the button, they got to control the timing of this event. So it can't be really anything to do with the courts, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be from their own control, like they can control this, they can time this. Josh Pace says they've been delaying this decision. I mean, there's a lot there that fits the dissolution theory to Josh Pate's teases. The one that doesn't quite fit is his very last tease of yesterday when he showed the glass shaken of Ross Dellenger's article. But then again, I don't know. Maybe it works. The lawsuits would happen though, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I think it works much better as a threat, only because that depends upon what you're trying to get. If it's because even raising those lawsuits and going through that, that's still a major pain for the schools that would then have to do that. And if the answer to keep from having to do that is you give them a proper settlement for exit, like with a number and a price, well, yeah, okay, now you're in a tough spot going forward. Like, what do we do with the conference going forward? But at least then you're sitting on a pile of money that you're not giving half of it to the lawyers.
Yeah.
You know? So I think at that point in time, you know, looking at this from like a poker game style thing, I mean, the value there, you probably don't want to push them to that. So if that's the threat that they're at this point in time, then it might work. But like I said, I don't think we're ever going to see dissolution. I just think it's a threat.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you. I have agreed with you that, I mean, I have not been a believer in that. Matt Baker came out with an article. I'm not going to go through it now, but he says, who's number 3 in conference, right? Between the ACC and the Big 12. He just put out a post. Who's number 3, the ACC or the Big 12? I looked at some metrics for each in why it's not outlandish to think that the answer could matter to, say, FSU. So he's And here's
the ACC is pretty top heavy, so
and here's another problem. Here's one other problem with Josh Pate about the dissolution theory is we know here at Peek Around the Corner that these alleged more aggressive third-party talks, when we reported a couple weeks ago, we know that was real recent. So I don't even know why Florida State and Clemson would be partaking in third-party talks with the Big 12 if, early conversations, as Ross Dellenger describes them, if they have this, dissolution thing, ready to go. So that's another shot against the theory, in my opinion.
Kind of got a working theory as to why this might be the case, but it's not anything that I would proclaim. I've been thinking for a while that the battleground is in North Carolina. You've been saying that. Others have been saying that.
Yes, it is.
It's pretty much where it's at. I mean, I know you said North Carolina, Notre Dame, but between the Big Ten, it's North Carolina. And so what I did then is I did a direct comparison, because we're talking about the North Carolina Board of Governors holding this up, saying they want to see all the realignment numbers, like what's better for who and what and where. And if the Big Ten is sitting here saying, fine, we'll take North Carolina State too to get North Carolina, that is, to me, the biggest threat in all of this. Because now if you're the SEC, your network headquarters is in Charlotte. You've been projecting for a while that you want to get into that state. And what you're seeing here is, okay, so they're not looking at Florida State. They're not looking at Clemson, the Big Ten.
No.
What are they doing? They need 2 more. Oh, crap. Are they looking at North Carolina and North Carolina State? Do we win that battle head-to-head against the Big Ten? I don't care if the Board of Governors leans and favors the SEC in terms of, we want to go south. If you're looking at straight numbers for those 2 schools, you're saying, I'm sorry, the better location is the Big Ten. If they're willing to take both schools, we're signing off. We have to. That's our duty. It's our diligence. We have to do that. It's not even close. So if you're...
By the way, Immaculate?
Yeah.
I've just flip-flopped again.
Did I get you?
No, I flip-flopped on this dissolution theory. Josh Pates, and I have no idea what he's talking about, but Tracy FSU in the chat room, quote unquote, restructured ACC. Remember Josh Pate in that first tease? A restructured, reconfigured ACC?
Mm-hmm.
That was part of his first tease. You know, that fits right in the dissolution theory again.
But it could all fit what I've been suggesting to you.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a lot more trapdoors and contractions, and that's a lot more different keys and yeah, I don't know. Anyways,
yeah,
we're having
but
fun with it
dissolution
because
theory
we don't
doesn't
know.
leave behind an ACC.
Yeah.
It deletes the ACC.
Can somebody send me Bob Thompson's latest tweet?
Is it the one about how he doesn't think that it's a strain for, like, if they were to go up to 18 schools and try to get enough to have $50 million per team, that it's a strain to think that even Florida State and Clemson get that? I did something about it.
I don't know if someone could send it to me. I don't.
I'll try and grab it for you.
Okay, no, someone got it to me.
Is it the napkin math?
I guess, yeah. Napkin math using averages of the new Big 12 TV deal. To get to 50 million school total rights would have to increase 507 for 16 schools to 900 million per year of 18. Seems a bit ambitious. Well, yeah, yes. Yeah, I don't think the TV deal would go up that much at all. I think private equity would be part of the math in all that. That's just my take. Well, Immaculate, I appreciate it, man. You got anything else for us?
No, I just kind of wanted to come in there because I know with all this going on, everyone's kind of readjusting to this and trying to accept maybe some new realities.
There is.
And
yeah.
I've been telling some folks, like, just we're at a point now where you almost just got to anchor yourself down and understand that the winds are going to be blowing hard from a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
Just kind of the same truths that we had in mind before, they still exist. There's some gamesmanship at play here, and it's going to be interesting to see play out, but I think some of the same rules that we've been talking about previously still hold true now. So
got it. All right. Appreciate it, Mr. Hawkeye.
Absolutely. Talk to you later.
Yeah. I do think that for well over 90% of you all in the chat room, it should not matter what fan base you're from, but you should know by now that all the talk that these schools know exactly, like, you know, this Florida State's going to get, they've already gotten a Big Ten offer, and all that has been, it's never been true. I think it's now obvious to everybody.
Call from
JD.
JD, the floor is yours. What is going on, sir?
How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Have to admit, I've it's that time of day every time I try to listen to your show, and then that's what everybody tries to call me. So I've been able to catch a good gist of what's going on. But going to the disillusion theory, dissolving the conference isn't even necessary. You know why? Because the composition clause exists.
Okay.
All you have to do is upset the apple cart and give ESPN enough reason, which it sounds like they aren't going to renew the contract anyway. So, but maybe they're just looking for an excuse. Mm-hmm. So maybe FSU announces an exit first, then ESPN has an excuse, and then they trigger the clause. If they trigger the clause, from what I understand, they don't have to wait till next February. It could be immediate. Now, I don't know that. I don't know all the particulars. I don't know how it works out. It mostly just triggers a renegotiation, which could be done at any time. So we may not be looking at a lot of the 2 lingering years left on this grant of rights. So if that's the case, then that makes some things easier. Look at what FSU announced earlier today. I don't know if you talked about that or not, but they announced a partnership with Legends, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's with 6th Street Partners is the backing behind that company.
Yes, and if you recall here at Peek Around the Corner, we talked about we gave enough clues about a certain meeting that happened in Chicago. We gave out some of the receipt as a hopefully fun way of giving out clues to what that meeting was about. A lot of people went with the Big Ten, Florida State, but it wasn't that. It was 6th Street and Florida State meeting in Chicago. 6th Street has an office. Supposedly there was a restaurant there. We know there were people by both parties meeting there. It was 6th Street. I don't know if if they were talking about this, but I'm sure they were at some point, because 6th Street owns Legends and Florida State just signed a deal.
Well, I know it's creating they say it creates new multimedia opportunities moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
6th Street has a lot of experience, from what I understand, running pro franchises and maybe even network experience. So if there is some type of a breakaway, I think everybody involved would prefer to go to the Power 2, but when I refer to our insiders a lot, sometimes they don't talk in specifics, but there has been a little conversation lately, and it's been very vague. And sorry, I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm now in my truck, so if it gets too loud, I can call you back.
We're good.
But they've made, and I think even TJ was talking about it on one of his recent episodes on his YouTube show, but new multimedia opportunities moving forward, and that, just and also again that TNT thing just lingers out there, and I don't know what that means. But then also there were some things that were very vague, talking about FSU having scheduling agreements, being in a conference, but also having some scheduling agreements with the Big Ten, SEC, and Big 12. And I don't know what all that means. It could just be home and homes or whatever. Devil's advocate?
Yeah.
What if that's been the plan? To get into the Power 2, but maybe it can't happen right now. And there is potentially a backup plan to have a power conference of 9 or 10 teams, just in the meantime, to where some of these lawsuits get taken care of. I don't know. There's so many contingencies in place, but it doesn't seem like this is just a fly by the night, fly by the seat of your pants type of a move. They've gained this out, and they've got other contingencies, and maybe some of the ones that Dellinger laid out are exactly the way it is, or maybe it's a hybrid between the two. I don't know, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
I know some FSU fans are getting all worked up. I'm not. I mean, it's going to be whatever it is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's just unknown. I still think, and I could be wrong, I don't know what Josh Pate is alluding to, that's a whole nother, like, that's like the elephant in the room or the T-Rex in the room, right? Is the Josh Pate teases. I don't think it's knowable. Like, I know Josh Pate's teases, and I've said this since the very first tease. And you and I have talked off the show. I know this is not about the SEC or the Big Ten. I know it isn't. But it could be about the Big 12 or the dissolution theory or the ACC dropping. There's a lot of other big stories that this could be. These teases from Josh Pate could be. But I know it's not about the Big Ten. And I'm 99% sure it's not about the SEC. But that still leaves a whole bunch of other unbelievable big story outcomes here. So, and he said by the end of the week, well, it's Wednesday, JD. It's Wednesday. Tomorrow, there's no Big 12 Media Day. And, sure. JD, Josh Pate, one of his teases was they were going to do this. They're going to drop whatever this is going to happen. It was going to be done, and you've brought this up yourself, JD. It was going to be done with the marketing in mind, branding, whatever, like the best time to do it, right? Well, you do it the day after the Big 12 Media Days are over. We'll find out tomorrow, hopefully, or Friday, hopefully.
There's, I anticipated if it was an announcement coming from FSU, it would be done after ACC Media Days. But maybe not. And I go back and forth. I try to figure out, I was talking with some others, and it's kind of the chicken or the egg. Which comes first?
I don't think it's... Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I don't... And I could be wrong, JD. I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong, okay? But I don't think what Josh Pate is teasing, if it comes true, is solely about Florida State, because he said this is about Florida State and other ACC schools. Florida State is the face of it, but it's not just about them. So I don't, if there's an announcement, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, what I don't know is the trigger. Is it an announcement from the ESPN first? Let's say, like you've talked about, whether they're not going to renew the contract, or whether they're going to decline the option, or does ESPN know that FSU's going to announce this summer, so they tell them, all right, go ahead and do it, so that we can decline the option afterward, and you've got the blood on your hands, not us. And they'll almost be like they were forced to do it. Yeah. And so I go back and forth on that. At this point, I don't think really everybody expects what's coming as far as that. If FSU announces it and if ESPN declines the option, it's not a surprise. So, but it could be a bigger announcement. It could be something even more extensive. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you announce something more extensive and it not include the entire ACC. It just seems like there would have to be a process to get there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
If one, let's just say if one, all right, let's say FSU does announce this Friday, and I'm not saying it happens. I hear they're going to announce soon. I haven't, nobody's set a date as far as that I know of. But let's just say that is the triggering event for the bigger objective or the bigger event to happen. Then over the fall, you get the traction of the other members that don't want to stick around in the ACC, and you do get a reconfigured or reconstructed ACC minus a lot of their value brands. Maybe the ACC does become the private Ivy. I think that's the way Immaculate is, or believe him and some others have talked about that. Primarily him, I've heard him say it. And then maybe there is a breakaway conference of power teams, whether it's short term or long term. I don't know. I think just getting out of the ACC was the highest priority, because I think, I hate to say it, you get rid of some of the dead weight as far as monetarily on a football contract. It's going to be better for the teams that leave. I have a hard time believing the ACC could collect $140 million exit fees out of 7 or 8 teams. At some point, the court's going to step in and say, you're not eligible to $1 billion for half of your membership leaving. But that's something they'll fight out for years in court. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
So the court cases to me aren't going away. I think teams are going to leave. I've talked about that with you for months, that I don't believe the court cases were the key to the exit. It didn't make any sense then, but then now you have all this media chatter, and even now I'm not saying you believe it, but you consider it a possibility. So what all does that mean? I don't know. I mean, like I told you, I think I messaged you about this, and it's just my little theory that Peter Collins and other people have talked about it too. I've even presented it where I wish some of the lawyers would chime in about it, and they just haven't. But that when he was talking about antitrust, he was more or less insinuating that if a member of the ACC leaves the conference, okay, the ACC, because the ACC gives its members an opportunity to leave, there's an exit process, to prevent them after they've left the conference from engaging in trade with another conference or another network is a restraint of trade. That is an antitrust violation. And it doesn't matter. The way I understand it, doesn't matter what they signed or whatever else. The law is the law. A civil contract doesn't supersede the law. So forcing them to abide by that is a restraint of trade, and I think it will be found to be unenforceable. Now, that doesn't mean the ACC can't still collect damages. And that's why the court cases, I think, will continue. So they may say, okay, well, you're bound to the grant of rights. So we can't, or let's just say it does continue, the grant of rights, for another 2 years. They may sit here and say, all right, we can't keep you from entering into another contract with someone else, and we don't have any justifiable means to that money, but you still owe us what we would have gotten for those 2 years of you being in the contract. And so I think that's very possible, that might still be something that has to be litigated and resolved. So even though they may not be able to prevent the universities from leaving with their media rights, they still might be due a pretty hefty settlement or a pretty hefty judgment. So that's just where I fall on things. I would love for any lawyer to tell me I'm wrong and why I'm wrong, because I'm trying to get one to answer that question, and they just kind of look at it and say, I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, I'm rambling here, and the weather's getting worse, so let me get off the phone so I don't drive off the road.
I appreciate it. Great call,
hey,
JD.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. All right. Have a good day. All right, bye.
If you are new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Open up your notifications. Smash that like button. Patrick, Josh Pate said within 8 weeks. But in the last tease that Josh Pate put out, he said the dam will start to break by the end of the week, this week. And then where it goes from there, nobody knows. He said something like that. So he condensed the timeline on whatever's going to happen. He condensed the timeline. It's going to happen within the next 9 Saturdays, next 8 Saturdays. Suddenly it's going to start at the end of this week, near the end, or something like that. Some point this week, but it sounded like near the end of the week. So, now I don't know. Look, maybe he got bad information, but he's tripled down. He's condensed the timeline, which is a good indication that something is live. And then Ross Dellenger throws out option number 2, the dissolution theory. Today in the interview with John Kurtz, he doesn't know option number 1 is going to happen for Florida State. Option number 3, long shot, but there have been some conversations. ESPN, absolutely. That deal is confirmed. It's done. ESPN. Amazon. Who else is in that deal for the NBA? 3 networks. ESPN dropping a lot of bags to keep the NBA. I don't Greg, you sound like you've got a bomb to drop. I know there is another layer to the story in regards to Big Ten, SEC, Clemson, Florida State, and their perceived targets. There is another layer to the story. At some point, it's inevitable that it is going to be released. From somebody somewhere, probably multiple people, that is the chatter behind the curtain. I cannot advance it. It's one of the reasons why I know that Josh Pate's tease is not about the Big Ten or the SEC. But I completely understand why a whole lot of people thinks it is. But I know it isn't. And I get it. Greg, you're being misdirected. Greg, you're being fooled. No. So I have I know of an additional layer, and I've known it since May 23rd, but I've always said there's parts of it that I've been trying to dance around it. I've been showing stuff. And this layer is going to come out. And when it happens, it will be obvious. And we'll talk about it. So there are things that I know. But there's a whole bunch of things I don't know. Josh Pate's tease. Big 12, ACC. Is the ACC... Is ESPN dropping ACC's contract? Is this a dissolution theory? I don't know. But it's not about the Big Ten, and it's not about the SEC. It ain't. And I think you can tell by just what Ross Dellenger said about, I don't know about the SEC Big Ten. He knows more than that, but he's chose not to say any. I believe he knows more than that. I believe that the chatter behind the curtain, they know that the SEC and the Big Ten are like, slow down, you move too fast. We've been talking about this since May 23rd, and I think you're seeing it develop in going into that direction. And thank goodness I was fortunate enough to have a couple doors open to me where I could get this information and deliver it to you. But there are other doors closed. One of them is the Josh Pate, whatever this is. I don't know. The last theater update is, the last Holy Smokes theater update was Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti leaving the Holy Smokes theater, the ACC drama. That was my last update. That was weeks ago. And that is holding up very, very, very well. Another indication that we were able to deliver you the correct peek around the corner before pretty much anybody else. We need another theater update. Well, I got to be honest with you. I don't have one. How about them apples? I don't have one. I don't. It bothers me. I'm working on it. I have struck out. I don't know Josh Pate's story. So we've been opening up to speculating on it, going crazy over it. I know it's not about the Big Ten. I know it's not about the SEC. I know that we reported to you that the Big 12 was having third-party talks with Florida State and Clemson. We did that a couple weeks ago. Now that's come out. So the information I've been able to give you has been dead accurate since May 23rd, but I don't have Josh Pate's story. To me, it has to be about the Big 12, the ACC, or some combination thereof. But it's not about the Big Ten and the SEC. I just don't know what it is. This week, Patrick, that was the last tease. I don't have one. Other than this other layer that there is this, it has to do with Big Ten, SEC, Florida State, Clemson, and potentially, there's another layer to the story that has not been presented. And I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know when. I don't know how. But this other layer is going to be laid down at some point. Probably multiple ways, multiple people. You know, Josh Pate said whatever story whatever thing he has, he did say he believes there are people who have this story in the oven. What I'm saying, there's this other layer to the story. I believe there are reporters who have this story in the oven. But it ain't the same story as Josh Pate. Mine is just a more layer of information that is going to be seen as possibly a little shocking, a little bit more context to the situation. For some, it's going to be shocking. There's another layer there. And I believe there are people that have that in the oven. Josh Pate believes his story, whatever it is, it's in the oven. Reporters. But there is no way that what I'm talking about is what Josh Pate's talking about. Even though I don't know what Josh Pate is talking about. Because mine is Mine is the layer that I have is a layer of the information is of non-action and why it's non-action. Josh Payne is alluding to a big bomb. Mine is not a big bomb. Mine is a buckets and buckets of cold water type of. So we're like, we're not talking about the same thing. That is as far as I can go with it. What a crazy time. What an absolutely crazy time here at Peek Around the Corner. We are going to shut down this live show. We've been on the air for 2 hours. We still got 427 people. Holy smokes. Thanks for all join us today. I want to thank the donations, the comments in the chat room, and for your incredible phone calls. Wednesdays, we have to make these shows not so long. Wednesdays are my most difficult days to put on a live show because of other commitments with the wife and family. But if there is more breaking news tonight, then there could be. That happened last night. We will come on live again tonight. If the story gets pushed a little bit further, if the layer of this that I'm talking about, that I know, if it gets laid out tonight, we're going to come on live. If Josh Pate's story erupts, we're coming on live. So subscribe to our channel and have those notifications turned on to our channel. And please follow us at Plug Empire on X. You see that at the bottom of your screen because we give people a heads up when we're going to come on live next. Buckle up. Brace for impact. Josh Pate, I don't know, man. I don't know. We speculated more theories, more options. Have we completely struck out on all of our speculation? Probably. Probably. But I do know of another layer that's coming in on this whole situation. Some more buckets of cold water. We'll get into it. We'll get into it when it happens. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. I'm looking you in the camera. It is going to happen. So, Ross Dellenger, interviewed by the great John Kurtz. He did a brilliant job. Please check out that interview in the description box. There's a link. Hit the link. Watch John Kurtz interview on his channel with Ross Dellenger today. Confirmed, for those who did not believe, confirmed that the Big 12 has had conversations, early conversations with Florida State, Clemson, and they were recent, and allegedly, they were a little bit more aggressive in a particular manner than what usually happens during third-party talks. And that's as far as I can go with that. So, buckle up, brace for impact. If there's more breaking news tonight, we're going to be coming on live once again. Until next time, from all of us at College Football's Peek Around the Corner to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.